Hey, what's up guys? It's Blink. Sorry I haven't been posting a whole lot of content lately. I got very tied up with the holidays. I got 2 sons and I have a lot of nephews and nieces, and I've had family over. I've been hosting a lot for the holidays and just trying to make it through this holiday season with COVID and all the other craziness. But so you guys know, I have been anxiously waiting on my truck to be finished. My motor's been completely rebuilt, and that's from the crank up. I got a new stage 4 cam, I got drop-in pistons, I got ported polished heads and cutouts, torque converter, 3200 RPM stall, yada yada yada, a lot of different stuff. And it's going to be very awesome. I'm being told that they're expecting about 850 horsepower to the ground. Changed the pulley on the Pro Charger, so if you guys are like motor heads, gear heads, you guys like high horsepower builds, it's kind of unconventional build because it's on a fully loaded LTZ GMC Sierra crew cab. So we'll hopefully smoke some 5.0 Mustangs and have a few other cool races lined up. So subscribe and like for that. Is coming very soon, hopefully next week. But in today's video, I'm going to go ahead and do a few things on the General, and I thought I'd share with you what I'm going to do and maybe help you with a few services that you'll have to do. I've hit about 750 miles on my General, and I've already completely worn out my brakes. So first thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to go ahead and change the brakes on the General. And then I've also been spinning belts. I keep on spinning belts, and I'm trying to figure out why I keep spinning belts. Well, I put the 4-inch portals with a 30% gear reduction on the General, and when I did it, I decided I was going to put a clutch kit on it. So I put a sport clutch from EPI Performance on it. And I noticed when I went out, I went to a mud hole, which is in the videos. If you scroll back in my videos up at River Neck, and I smoked my clutch and my belt. I mean, completely destroyed my primary clutch. So I called up EPI. They sent me a free spring so I could make it a mutter clutch, because they told me I probably needed the mutter spring in my secondary clutch, which would help with the belt spinning. So I put that on, and I did notice a big difference. I mean, it jerked really hard to start. I know the weights changed too. They were 3 grams lighter, which will make you have a higher RPM before clutch engagement. So I figured that this stuff was working, but I'm learning about this machine as I go. I've strengthened things as I went. When I lifted it up, axles became weaker, so I had issues with axles. That's why I lowered it, and I'm going to be adjusting the camber today on that too. But I've also had other issues with it, as far as I had inner tie rod ends breaking, and I had to beef those up because they would break if the tires grabbed when I went over a hill. So it's been a learning curve with this machine. It's a little different than building a truck, and when you jack these things up, I don't care how good you've built them with the kits that you get, but a lot of times there's a couple weak points, and you'll discover those as you go. And I'm trying to share that with you guys as I go, because I think I've pretty much fine-tuned this machine to a point now where I'm not having really any issues with it. And the final issue I've been having is smoking belts. I took my nephew and my niece out. They begged me to take them mudding on Christmas Day. So we went down the power lines and we tore it up. I had been drinking and I kept it in high, and I completely smoked a belt. And I said, that's it. I got to address this. And it's not just me riding in high, even when I'm in low. It seems like it burns belts when it shouldn't. So I called up some guys that are the best clutch guys in the world, and they told me that I don't necessarily need a clutch kit because of my gear reduction, and they don't always say that you should put a gear or a clutch kit on your gear reduction, because then apparently you don't get enough pressure on the clutches and it could cause your belt to slip. And for me that made sense, because a lot of times when my belt's slipping, it's slipping before I ever do anything crazy, just going up a hill and low if I'm not on the gas hard enough. So I'm going to restore the clutch back to stock, and I'll show you guys how to clean them. I'll show you guys how to change a belt, how to pop your primary and secondary clutch, and just me working on the machine. We'll throw the brakes on, put the new brake pads on the calipers. I'll show you how to remove the caliper and put the brake pads on. And then also, since I lowered the General to make the angle on the axles a little bit easier, I didn't need the clearance I had. 10 inches was a little much with 4-inch portals just for 35-inch tires as of right now. So I lowered the General about 3 inches, and it messed the camber all up, so I need to adjust the camber on it. I'll show you guys how to adjust the camber on these Super ATV lifts. And I also need to adjust the tie rods a little bit. Just driving over time, I don't know what, but it's a little off. It pulls to the right a little bit, and the steering wheel's a little off. So all that stuff on today's video. You guys be sure to like and subscribe my content. I got a lot of stuff coming up, and I hope today's video helps you guys with what you're doing. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and change these brake pads. I've already gone ahead and broke them loose off camera, but it's just a 15mm socket. trying to get in there without taking everything off. Let's see. Brake pads are pretty easy. Bleeding the brakes could be a little trickier. Hopefully we don't have to get into that. All right. I noticed last time I had this thing apart, these were getting pretty worn down. Go ahead and pop the cap on your master cylinder. Mine's located right here, very easy. All right guys, once you have your calipers off, there's a pin in the back of this drive pin, a bolt, that I'm just gonna go ahead and loosen up because it gives you a little bit more play. If you have a C-clamp, it's probably preferable. I have channel locks, so I'm gonna very lightly press them from side to side. That should be enough. You might have to compress this a little bit. See how it has a little bit of play? And that guide pin, so you can get the brake pad out. You can see right here, there's no pad left on that. Look at that, dude.
It's just the hair.
Just a hair, just a little bit. Here's the new brake pads. Race-driven performance pads. We'll see how they do. Never had them, but the price was right. And what I did notice is that's a little bit thicker, so it was a little tougher to get on the other side. And the stock pad. Make sure you face these pads together. Take your time when you're putting them on. And that's all there is to it. Getting your new pads on. All you want to do is kind of separate those a little bit. So they got on either side of your rotor. I still got a little Loctite on there. Just a little reminder to you guys, after you've tightened up your bolts, make sure you go back and you tighten up this bolt that's inside of this drive pin that allows you to take those pads off. Let's get it good and snug, and that's that. And when you go ahead and you put some pressure on your brakes again and get your cap back on, these things will tighten up onto the rotor again and they won't have any play. All right, first thing we gotta do is take this clutch cover off. You guys will know how to do it. It's an 8mm. And this thing, I just tried to back it up. It's spinning so bad, it won't even really engage to back up. This is why it's parked the way it is. And when you're tightening these, set your clutch to like a 5 if you're using a drill, because if you strip those, you compromise the seal on this cover, and it doesn't take much when you're screwing into that plastic. The Polaris razor is a lot better. It actually has a metal base that you screw into, and you don't have to worry so much about stripping it like this plastic. Now before you pop this primary clutch all the way off, it's good to loosen up this belt. So just use your clutch tool that comes with the kit. This is an AR tool. I wouldn't recommend that, but at least get that belt kind of loosened up so it doesn't put all that stress on the primary clutch when you loosen this. So all you do is you thread this tool right here into your primary clutch. I like to thread it all the way in because I get scared that it might break inside of it. And you just tighten right onto that. All right guys, it's a 22mm for that tool. That's how you take that primary clutch off. And I can already see there's some pretty serious rubber. Oh, this thing's glazed as hell. Give myself a little bit of room. And you can see how it's glazed, that belt. And I don't know if it's riding too high or what, but we're gonna take this apart and take that clutch kit off of it. And hopefully, when you're looking at these primary clutches, the way to know that they're burned out is these cooling fins. If you got waves on the inside of here, your primary clutch is worn out and your sheaves are no good. You'll need a new one. I've already been down that road. It's expensive. This might be the worst glazed belt I've ever seen. I don't even see a spot on it that's not glazed. The whole entire belt is glazed. Look how shiny it is. So yeah, it's trash. $150 down the tube. Secondary clutch is pretty simple. It's just a 15 millimeter. Pop this off. And that just comes right off. Secondary clutch looks pretty good. You can see it's pretty wet in here from spraying water and cleaning this. I got a little bit in the snorkel, but we'll clean that up. I'll show you how to clean these and score them up a little bit with a Brillo pad or a really high grit sandpaper. This is a little cheapo clutch compression tool. I've actually done all this without them, but it does make it a little easier when you compress the clutch to get all the springs and stuff out of it. But as you can see, this thing's all loose. There's really no good way to clamp it to a bench or anything. So I don't know, it's not the greatest, but I'll just kind of push it down with my own weight and just tighten that up. I went ahead when I was building this and I thought I was doing myself a solid putting the Mutter clutch kit on, because I only went with a 30% gear reduction, but even my odometer reads about 10 miles an hour slower than it's going. So I guess that I didn't put as big of tires as I could have with the reduction I put on it, just by going off of that. Let's see. Keep all this together. And then to get that off, I do the same thing. I just kind of put some weight on it. Don't just let go of this thing, it will pop. You don't want to get hit in the grill with this. But that's how simple it is to take apart this primary clutch. That's the Mutter clutch spring. So we're just going to get rid of this and we're going to put the factory back in. But also what we'll have to do is these weights are 67 grams. And you can see they all move freely, so we know it's not a issue with the weights. It's just an issue with apparently the clutch setup that's on it. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna unbolt all these and I'm gonna thoroughly clean the clutch. I'll show you how to clean the clutch. When you take this apart, mine's already been marked. I know where my marks are. This X lines up right here with this, but there will be blue marks on your clutch. These things are pre-weighted. You wanna put them together the same exact way that you took them apart. Should have mentioned that at the beginning. All right guys, we're gonna change these weights out. These are the weights, 10 millimeter and a 3. And be careful not to strip these. When you're checking these, you want to make sure there's no corrosion. You want those weights to move freely. This is pretty clean. I'll still clean it up before I put it back together. You already saw the weights move freely, but if you are having issues with your clutch, check that. And just hit it with a Brillo pad and some brake cleaner, and that'll clean it up for you. I'll show you guys how to clean this primary clutch up. So just got a Brillo pad. I'm sure there's some other stuff you can use. Before I even do this, I'm gonna blow everything off. Get some of that belt residue, because you will have some, or just dirt or other stuff. All right, what you want to do, you want to get some brake cleaner, spray the inside, and you want to not go in circular motions but straight and kind of make like X's what that'll do is it'll cause it to grip better. As you can see, after we do it, those scuffs, you want them in straight lines against each other. And that's how I've always read to do it. And that's how I've always done it when I've cleaned them. Just use the brake cleaner to clean it off. You don't want to have any grease or any kind of residue on this. That will help that belt slip. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and put these weights back in and maintain the stock weight. We already cleaned these with a Brillo pad. I didn't go through all that. You guys know how to clean it. Brake fluid, Brillo pad, wipe them off with a paper towel. And I started to do this. I had to redo this because I wasn't paying attention. There's one side that's got like a counter sink and it's flat. So you have to put the bolt in a certain way so that the nut will sit flat. So make sure your bolt's in on the rounded edge, and then that flat edge has the nut. Otherwise, it's not gonna sit flat. It's not gonna work right. All right, guys, I'm about to put the stock springs back in the primary. There's a little notch. I believe that this one goes in the secondary clutch, and the one without the notch goes in the primary. So we're gonna get this on. Make sure if you made your mark, you make your lines. Like I said, I know my X's are lined up on my primary clutch. Before you disassemble, put lines on it. Make sure you put it back together the way that it came apart. And I'm gonna show you guys that you can do this without a clutch compression tool. Just because I'm trying to speed it up, it's starting to rain here. I just put some weight down on it. And I'll thread a few of these really quick. Just get them started at least. If you put your knee on it all the way down, see, that's all the way tight. Just don't let your weight off, because God forbid you bind up the clutch. You could mess something up. And these clutches are not cheap. All right, so we got the clutch compression tool on this already, and we've already broke all of these loose. I had a lot of issues the first time I did this. I used red Loctite. Don't use red Loctite. I had to hit it with a torch. It was a freaking nightmare. Blue Loctite, if you're gonna use some. I try not to put too much, I just make sure they're nice and tight. But now that they're all broke free, be very careful with these. They are not very strong, and they're very easy to strip. And honestly, that's the hardest part of doing this secondary clutch, is not stripping these torques. Now, if you got the clutch compression tool that I have, and I just scratched my head on it again and had to edit it out, there's a smaller thread on one side, so you got to take the base off of it, and then you want to put the smaller end all the way through the primary, and then your clamp on top of it with the nut, and that's how you get that off. And once you do all that, you just want to loosen this nut. After you've got all four of those broke, you're going to loosen this, and that spring's going to push your helix right out. I'll probably end up welding something together and making my own clamp tool, because this thing right here is just, it's a pain in the ass. When you take this helix off, that's my aftermarket helix. I just want to show you guys, this is the stock helix. There's not a whole lot of difference in these, really just that groove. I'm not exactly sure what that little bit of an angle does. Apparently it does something. I'm maintaining all stock, so I'm going to go back to the stock helix as well. The Mutter clutch kit comes with a pink spring, but we're doing away with that. And I was right earlier when I told you that the slotted spring goes with the secondary clutch. You can see there's a little notch in the base of this, which that goes into. And I don't know why the aftermarket isn't like that, but it isn't. So I'm gonna clean this clutch up the same way I cleaned up the primary clutch. I'm not gonna make you guys go through all that, and then I'll show you putting everything back together and putting the belt back on. All right, so we've got the secondary clutch on. I'm gonna go ahead and just get this bolt threaded in. Now for me, when I change these belts, I find it's easier. I get my clutch tool, which was laying on the tire. All right, when you put your belt on, make sure you can read the writing. That's how I've always been told it's done. And I just find it's a little easier to do it like this. So I'll put that in. Oh, come on there, baby. And I'll open it up and I'll pull that down as far as I can in there. All right, so that's in pretty good. And then I'll grab my primary clutch, which we already went through when we cleaned all these thoroughly, because I bought a brand new belt. And I'll just kind of wrap that around like so, and the primary clutch is on. To me, that's the easiest way to put the belt on. You could also put both the clutches on first and then do the same process. But it can be tricky to get between your belt cover and your clutch sometimes. So I like to do it before when I have a little bit of an advantage. I set my clutch to 7. Put this back on. That's done. All right, so I've showed you guys the clutch going back to stock, put on a new belt, and we've put all new brand new brake pads on it. That's a 500 miles. I went ahead and did this. Now, just from lowering the lift and riding this thing hard, it has come out of whack some, and you can see this back tire is twisted. It looks out, and the camber and the toe need to be adjusted on it. So we're gonna by eye try and get the toe as good as we can, and we'll use a tape measure, and we'll measure from the center of the tread on either side to get it as close as we can, and then we're going to draw a wire and straighten up the front. This tire is not quite as bad, but you can still see this is flat against the door. It looks like it kicks out. So when I adjust it only has camber adjustment, so if you want to adjust the toe, you're going to have to just overcompensate on one of your camber adjustments to toe it in a little. And I mean, that's really the only way we're going to be able to adjust the toe on this at all. So we're going to give it our best shot, see what happens with it, and take it from there. All right, so we've got the rear suspension taken apart. It's a little bit of a bear to disassemble this. You got to take the sway bar off, and you got to take your shock off to get it off. But once you get it unbolted, what we did is we're going to try and use the camber adjustment to also affect the toe of the machine. And we're thinking that if you only tighten up one, it should give you a toe in or a toe out effect too. So we needed to bring, the tire was out of plumb towards the bottom, so it needs to come in. So we have to tighten this up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it 2 full turns, bolt it back together, because unfortunately this is a trial and error thing. It's not as easy as just tightening it and seeing where you're at. So that's 1 full turn, and that's 2 full turns. And for now, I'm just going to leave this relatively loose. Just hand tighten it. And then I'm gonna have to put the bolts back in and put the shock back on to see what it did to the tire. So we'll go ahead and put that together, and we'll show you guys the effect on the tire. All right, so I fought the rain all day and got this thing put back together. We went through and adjusted the camber, changed the brake pads. As you can see, that camber is way better. That one's at like a -1. I overcompensated on this one a little bit because it still looks, I don't know if it's leaning because of the road. It almost looks like it has no camber at all, and it's perfectly straight. I think it might be the angle of the road. I'll ride it for a week and see what it does, but all in all, it is night and day. Way better. We got the old better yet, we got the old original clutch kit put back on. Rides way better. I guess it was just not enough pressure on the clutches, so keep that in mind. If you're doing a gear reduction, you might not need a clutch kit, and it might actually do more harm than good. But you can see everything looks way more even. The brake pads, I can tell the new brake pads way better. The old ones were completely shot, so if you're going into mud about 500 to 700 miles, just anticipate doing some brake pads. And yeah, I'm happy with the way everything's come out. Alright, so driving it with the clutch kit, it's definitely changed way better. That jerky start that I had is pretty much gone away. My steering wheel's sitting almost perfectly straight. I might need to adjust the tie rods just a hair more. Looks like it slightly wants to go to the left at times, but you can see the camber way better. I'll show you the back camber, way better. So pretty much happy with that. I'll show you guys how this thing takes off with the stock clutch kit. With the gear reduction on 35s, I don't think it's lost much power. I'll show you how much smoother it is too. It had a jerky start, and now I'll show you how smooth the start is. So just going from nothing, look at that clutch engagement. It just goes, and it's smooth. It doesn't have that jerky start that it had, so that got rid of that. And then just to show you the acceleration, if you want to, and it spun them out. So it's wet right now, not getting a lot of traction. I want to let that belt warm up or break in too. I just put a brand new OEM belt. I've tried all the belts. I've tried the Super ATV Extreme Badass belt. I've tried the Badass EBT belt. I've tried Hunterworks thick belt. I'm trying to think if I've had any other ones. I think OEM's the only other one that I've had. And in my experience, trying all the belts, the OEM seems to last the longest. And everybody can say whatever they want to say about their belts. I called up, I'm not going to name specific companies, but I did call up companies and ask them if they warranty their belts. They said that they would, and every time you call about something, they have a reason why they can't warranty the belt. OEM, obviously you're not going to, it's a wearable item, so they're not going to even pretend like they have a warranty on the belt. But I can tell you I've put hundreds of miles on a warranty belt, or I mean on a stock belt, OEM belt, had very little issues. And then I've had these other belts from these other companies I just named and spun them the first day. And you know, once you spin them and they smoke once, it's like you never get that same traction with them again. So I'm gonna ride this thing and kind of evaluate what goes on with it. I have been getting a misfire code, and I think I've been getting a misfire code because it's oversensitive, so I am still considering putting a tune on it to get rid of that. They do have a tune that you can get on it, and it's supposed to not get rid of the misfire code, but apparently the stock misfire code is a little oversensitive and can give you false readings at times. So if you're going into limp mode and your service engine light's coming on, don't get worried. I've heard from several people that it's very unlikely that you actually have a misfire problem, that 9 times out of 10 is an oversensitive code, and with a simple tune you can have that fixed. Not necessarily a cheap fix, but I think the tune that I got offered was $250, so keep that in mind, it's an option. So I hope that just showed you guys how to adjust this camber and how to work on the machines has given you a little hope on fixing it, or just giving you a little bit of direction and showed you how I've done it. I kept a lot of things off camera. I'm not trying to pretend everything's easy. It's not. You'll run into issues, but I tried to save you guys from the pain of the issues that I run into. But like and subscribe. Got a lot more footage coming. I've been telling people for months about my truck dyno coming. I've been misled. Next week. I've had a lot of trouble getting into a tuner. I had to take my transmission computer out. I didn't even know that there was a TCM in these trucks. I had to break the transmission computer. They sent me the wrong torque converter. I had to get a new torque converter, and it's just held up for weeks and weeks. But that 1,000 horsepower GMC Sierra crew cab build is completed. I'm just waiting on my dyno, which is, I've been promised happening next week, so stay tuned for that.